Last week on Inside Racing, Edgar Britt spoke about his trip to America as a 19-year-old apprentice with the great horse Wanuka, his 10 years in India riding for the fabulously wealthy Maharajas, and his move to England after World War II. We continue the Edgar Britt story today as he talks about his wonderfully successful 14 years in Great Britain, where he won 1,200 races, including 7 of the great English classics. I know your 2 St Leger wins were the 2 that gave you a special thrill. I believe it's the oldest of the English classics.
That's right, yeah. And it's run in Yorkshire, Doncaster, and the Yorkshire men regard it better than the Derby. But that's only the Yorkshire men. The people in the south of England regard the Derby as the best race.
Now, will you ever forget your first St Leger on the horse with the Indian name that's hard to pronounce?
Sayajiro. That was the name of the Maharaja's grandfather.
I see. Can you recall with clarity his win in the St Leger?
Furlong by furlong, if you wanted.
Yeah. Tell me about the closing stages, because I've got wonderful old footage we can run as you talk about it.
Well, he was a horse that had a good turn of foot. And I wanted to sit as long as possible before using that. And the straight at Doncaster, you turn into the straight half a mile from home. And halfway down the straight, I'm in on the fence and they opened up and there was a run right through. And, you know, in racing, if you don't take the opportunities when they're there, they close on you. So I had to shoot through a bit sooner than I wanted.
And hope for the best.
Yeah. And he got a couple of lengths in front, but he only won by a head. A horse ridden by Charlie Elliott.
Kicked on.
Yeah. He finished, it was head and head for the last furlong practically. I was glad when the number went up.
Yeah. Well, 1 St Leger win is good enough. But lo and behold, you repeated the dose the following year. You won another St Leger on a great stayer called Black Tarquin.
That's
now,
right.
He could stay, couldn't he?
Yeah, he was an American-bred horse. And trained by Captain Boyd Rochford. And he beat a horse called Alicidon.
Into the last furlong, Black Tarquin, Alicidon and Solar Slipper are fighting it out, but here comes Tarquin now, striding into the lead and holding on right to the end. Black Tarquin the winner from Alicidon with Solar Slipper third. A great win by an American-bred colt whose Australian jockey, Edgar Britt, repeats his St Leger triumph of last year.
Well, you've got a lovely painting here of Musadora, one of your 2 English Oaks winners. What a lovely, long-bodied filly she is, Edgar. She must have been a long strider.
Yeah, she was a beautiful action filly. She was a daisy cutter. You know, she always like sitting in a Rolls Royce. She had beautiful action.
Your second win in the English Oaks came on a filly called Freeze, and she led for a good part of the trip.
She was a long striding sort of filly, and I didn't realise the value of a stride until riding in this, because the Oaks is run over the Derby course, you know, where they go up the hill and you bear right, then you come across to the inside rail about 7 furlongs from home. And as we were coming across, I was alongside Ray Johnson, who was riding the favourite, a French mare, and I found that we were striding in unison, and my filly was just, every stride she was taking, she was just about 3 or 4 inches longer stride than this filly. And it occurred to me, I didn't want to be in front, I wanted to be in behind.
Yeah.
It occurred to me then that if she was outstriding the favourite, she's probably outstriding everything else in the race. So I thought, well, I'll kick on and make them all carry their weight and have them all on the stretch and probably wear them all out. And just, you know, just leaving a little bit to finish with, instead of using a full length of stride, just had doing it comfortably. And she won by about 2 lengths.
It's freeze. Edgar Britt has the race won. Zabada can't catch her, and the rest are out of it. She's going beautifully and looks good for another mile. And at the post, it's freeze first, 3 lengths clear of Zabada, and the French right out of the picture. Not one in the first 4. Edgar Britt of Australia rode a grand race, and you might say it was a proper freeze-up for the French.
He rode with and against some marvellous jockeys in England in that golden era. None more legendary or more accomplished than the great Sir Gordon Richards, the only jockey in history to gain a knighthood. Did that change the man?
Well, we walked, myself and a couple of other jockeys walked into Epsom jockey's room the next day after it had been published, and we intended to congratulate him, but before we could do that, he said, "Now, if any of you bastards call me Sir Gordon," he said, "I'll belch you."
And that's the way he was from that day on.
Yeah, from that day on. But to top it up, we get down to the start of one of the races during the day, and the starter, I think it was Mr. Firth, was lining us up, and he said, "Are you ready, Sir Gordon?"
Didn't worry about the other 29.
But I think behind that he was just having a little dig at Sir Gordon at his knighthood. But just the same, no starter left Gordon, because 9 times out of 10 he was riding the favourite anyway.
Yeah.
So a good starter doesn't leave the favourite.
Your best year in England was the year you rode 148 winners for the season, and you ran second to Sir Gordon Richards on the premiership.
That's right, yeah. Oh, he was a good jockey.
How good was he?
Oh, well...
I'm showing a photo as we speak of you beating him in a race one day.
Well, you could get to him and you think you've got him, and he always managed to pull a little bit extra out. And you'd often follow him in a race because you think, oh, he's gone too soon, you know, which suited you. And somehow or other they kept plugging on. You'd get to him and you wouldn't get past him. It was hard to get past.
He had a gift.
Yeah.
The other great English jockeys you competed against?
Well, I'd say Lester. He was a great jockey. Charlie Elliott, Charlie Smirk, Harry Carr. They were all, you know, hold their own anywhere.
Best rider you saw in Australia? Probably an unfair question.
There were so many good ones. Australia turns out so many accomplished jockeys. You look at the videos of the day, they're good riders, these boys. They're really good riders. And it was the same all through my era. I could mention, you know, like Jim Pike, Jimmy Darby, Billy Cook, Andy Knox, a fella from Newcastle, Stan Davison, the tallest jockey I've ever seen. But
didn't they call him Daddy Longlegs?
Probably.
Was his nickname, I think, yeah.
And he could sit so low on a horse you'd think it was, you know, a fellow about 5 foot. He was about 6 foot on a horse.
Yeah.
No, he was a tall jockey, but he was a brilliant rider.
Yeah.
There were so many of them, but I would say probably Darby was the most dashing. He'd take on things that no one else would dare. He'd try and get up on the inside of something, and his animal would be clipping their heels. How they didn't fall, I don't know. He just had that charm way of...
Yeah.
And he'd push his way through anywhere.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, he won a race at the Randwick, and the hedge used to be there. You've seen old photos where the hedge was at Randwick. He was galloping on the hedge to get up on the inside of Jim Pike. I think Jim Pike rode Peter Pan, or one of those good horses. And he got up on the inside and beat him. Well, no one got up on the inside of old Jim. He'd go over the fence, but Darby did. And it was...
Determination.
His will to win was terrific. He came up alongside me one day at Canterbury. I'm in front. And he's come up, he had quite a bit in hand. And when he had you beat, he'd look at you, you know, like, I've got you. He always had that wise look, and I saw it fading. And I thought, this thing's dying in his hands. And I picked my thing up and got stuck into it. And I got up and beat him ahead. But in those days, you know, when you were getting up inside a horse, or they'd come and covered you, they really would cover you and just give you enough room to gallop. And Darby had me really tight on the fence. And the more his thing died, the more he laid on me. Anyway, it still had enough in hand to get up and beat him. And as we're pulling up alongside, I said, geez, Darby, I said, you chewed on my foot along the fence. He said, what are you complaining about? You've won it, haven't you?
So everything was black and white with Darby.
Yeah, as long as you won, it
didn't matter.
No.
Now, Edgar, at 86 years of age, you're allowed to cast modesty aside. So don't be shy when you answer this one. You rode against all of the champion jockeys at home and abroad. How do you think you stacked up against them? Your record says you stacked up pretty well.
Well, unfortunately I wasn't the best ever, but I rode with the best and held my own.
Why did you pull the plug at 46 years of age? A lot of jockeys, particularly in England, ride on into their 50s. I think we saw the best of Scobie.
Scobie
past 50.
Won the Derby, 2 derbies past 50.
Why did you stop? Was it a snap decision? Did you come home from the races one day and say, that's it, I'm pulling the plug?
Yep.
Did you? Did your family know?
No. I rode it in a 2-horse race. There was only 2 runners in a race at Lincoln. And I got left at the barrier. That's one of the worst things that ever happened to me. In race.
Have you ever said that publicly before?
No.
So we've got a scoop, have we, on Inside Racing?
Yeah.
You said to yourself, Britt, you're slipping.
Something's wrong there. It was 2 to 1 on.
And it shouldn't have missed the kick.
No. It was a horse that had a little bit of a bad mouth, and that's what happened. It sort of threw its head up and sort of left me with nothing.
Yeah. But that wouldn't have happened 2 years earlier.
Well, I'd have probably given it, thrown the reins at it and hit it with the whip and got away. I didn't think quick enough to do that.
You rode 2,000 winners. Goodness knows how many times you went around. But I think it's safe to say you were one of the lucky jockeys as far as accidents and broken bones were concerned.
Yeah, I got out of it pretty well. I woke up in the ambulance a couple of times and didn't know where I was. With concussion, and I broke my leg in 6 places one time. And then a little while after I broke it again. That was just a clean break. Matter of fact, I've still got the fibula. It's never united. It's still broken, yeah. But apart from that,
one of the lucky ones.
Collarbone, and small bone in my back and all that sort of thing.
Yesterday, when I was young, the taste of life was sweet, like rain upon my tongue. I teased at life as if it were a foolish game.
I got to say, you and I have been great friends for many years.
Yes, which I've appreciated and enjoyed.
Thanks, Edgar. We've never had a falling out.
No.
And there's only one thing I can think of that I'm dirty on, where you're concerned.
Yep.
You got to meet two of my boyhood inspirations, and I didn't get to meet them, and I think that's very unfair. One of them was that darling of the swimming pool from the movie world, Esther Williams.
Oh, yes.
And you've got a photo here to prove it, just to rub salt into the wounds.
Yeah.
Was that on a movie set?
Yes. Yeah. She was making a movie. I couldn't tell you what it was, but it was quite a big set, you know. They had swimming pool and water spraying up everywhere.
Yeah, I think it was called $1 Million Mermaid.
You might be right.
Now, the other darling that you got to meet, over whose movies I still drool, was Rita Hayworth. You once had lunch with Rita and her then husband, Ali Khan, in Paris, and you tell me something I can't believe. She had freckles.
Well, that was right, she did. But she's still a good-looking lady, and she was still a very normal sort of person, you know. Ali was going to drive us to the airport because Sam Armstrong was training for him, and we had lunch with him, and Sam and he spoke a bit of business, and I spent as much time as I could speaking to Rita, and then when it came time to go to the airport, he'd left it till the last minute. I didn't think we'd ever catch the plane back to England, and when he worked out, Rita said, "Drive carefully, darling." Well, through those streets of Paris, you know, all those Frenchmen do is blow horns. Ali went 100 miles an hour. We caught the plane. When we got up into the plane, Sam Armstrong, who didn't say much at all about anything during the drive, we were flying home, and he said, "We're in the safest place now."
When you announced your retirement from race riding in 1959, all of your fellow jockeys in London took you out to dinner, gave you a great send-off. Must have been a magic night.
It was, yeah, it was a moment. I was greatly honoured with what they were doing, but I felt very sad about it. And, you know.
Wonderful time had come to an end.
It's hard, yeah. And as I just said, yeah, racing really opens a lot of doors. It's amazing that people that you meet on the way in racing, well, you mix with the highest in the land and the average person, you know, the bloke that works in a shirt factory or something like that, which is probably mostly the average punter, and there's hundreds of those around. And well, me, from starting off from a little fellow that lived at Oatley, ended up, you know, going around the world and meeting so many fine people. It's something I wouldn't have done if I worked in the shirt factory.
You forgot to mention the fact that you rode for the king.
Yeah, that's right.
Here's an unfair question. The best horse you saw anywhere in the world?
I would say, I've got to say Farlap, because I was, to make allowances in this respect, I was young in those days, and when you're young you become more impressed.
Yep.
The impression is greater than it normally would be. With experience you get a bit more careful, but Farlap always registered on my mind as probably the best horse ever, because he could win from 7 furlongs to 2 miles, 2.5 miles.
You were just a touch too young to have ridden in a race against him, I'd imagine. Can you recall having ridden in a race against Farlap?
Yeah, I can't recall ever ridden in a race against him, no.
40 years have passed since that 2-horse race at Lincoln you were telling me about, the day you retired. Have you been on a horse's back since?
Not since I retired, no. I went, after that 2-horse, I rode a winner later on in the day after that incident. But I had my last ride at Liverpool meeting, and I haven't been on a horse since.
That means pleasure, hack, pony, anything.
I
You have not sat on a horse in 40 years.
No, I don't mind petting. They're lovely animals.
You've never felt the urge?
Yeah, I have. But I thought, well, I'll get on one and do something silly and fall off, but I'd look a bit of a fool, so I've never really got on one.
Well, Edgar, you're the proud dad of 4 beautiful daughters. A lovely photograph of the girls here as youngsters in England. Amazingly, none of them were born in England.
No, 2 were born in India and 2 born in Australia.
How do you feel about being 86? Frustration that it's gone so quickly? Frustration that there are things you didn't get around to doing? Sad that all of those great days are so far behind you? Do you think about this?
Yeah, I do. Well, one thing about getting old, nothing improves. But you've got memories, but you can't live on memories. You've got to think to the future, I feel. And I look back on my life, and I've had 2 good wives and two fine women, and I'm sad that I haven't got them with me. But I'm grateful that I've lived so long, and I'm grateful for the memories. But I don't look too far into the future. But
just day by day.
I'm only here because the Almighty doesn't want me, and I suppose that's about it.
Allow me to read for you the final paragraph of Edgar's autobiography, Post Haste, published in 1967. Well, it's all over for me now. The triumphs and the disappointments, the cheers and the hoots, the praise and the suspicions. From my home in Sydney, I watch the endless blue Pacific, but with never a single regret that I didn't follow my original boyhood intention to become a ship's engineer. Instead, I think back on my life as a jockey for 30 years all over the world, with only a month's suspension and that supreme honour at the end of the riding rainbow. Engaged for the King. Look forward to your company again next week on Inside Racing. Until then, many winners.